I think this is gonna be good. This should be the best one yet. That works okay. Rocco.
The new Ripley V5 brings a classic into a whole new era. Historically, the Ibis Ripley was first built to be a modern, light trail, all-day cross-country type bike. The Ripley was first launched in 2013 and came as a bit of a reaction to the Santa Cruz Tallboy and other 29ers, which were sitting at 100 millimeters of rear travel. The initial geometry was designed around a 100 millimeter fork and featured a 71-degree head tube angle. But then, things changed. By 2015, the Ripley V2 featured a 67.5 head angle and grew about 15 millimeters of reach. It was still a light-duty trail bike, though many of us attempted to race these in enduro events, as the benefits of 29-inch wheels became clear. The 2017 redesign kept the same geometry, cementing the Ripley as a light-duty bike built for low-angle trails. Much to the trepidation of many dads on Facebook and other forums, the 2019 update brought the Ripley into the modern era, essentially upgrading it to be almost a mini Ripmo. The Ripley AF completely replaced my Ripley V4, as the AF had several big upgrades. Mainly an improved rear suspension, which better resisted bottom outs from riding like a teenager, and a full degree slacker head angle, which allowed said teenager to fully take advantage of aforementioned suspension. I still ride my Ripley AF quite a bit, though I don't always show it on the channel here. But now, we're in 2024, and the new Ripley V5 brings a classic into a whole new era.
I want to give a big thanks to my friends over at Jensen USA who sponsored this video and made it possible. Thank you, Jensen. I've got the Ibis Ripley and the new Ripmo both linked to down in the description below. Anything you purchase from those links over at Jensen USA will then help support my YouTube channel, which is a big part of how we make this all happen. I also want to thank my friends over at Ibis who loaned me both this Ripley and the Ripmo. Fortunately, I got to send them back at some point, but let's cross our fingers it's not too soon. Thanks to Jensen USA, thanks to Ibis. Let's jump back into the video. Let's check out the new Ripley. I've been riding Ibis Ripleys since, I can't remember the year, 2013 or so. Ooh, get it, Jeff, from Nate. Nate left some messages, how fun. I was just out riding the new Ripmo and I bumped into an Ibis engineer on the trail and he mentioned that this bike's turned out really, really good in particular. So, okay, let's get this thing unwrapped. Looks a lot like an HD6. I just pulled the grips off to look at the handlebars, consider cutting them down, and they came pre-cut 775. I think we just leave those. I cut the other ones down to 770. It's a pretty negligible difference. And she's built. First ride on the Ripley. It's getting really nice out. Bike feels fast and fun. Oh. The dropper is really small.
On the very first ride, I noticed this bike is way more modern than the last one. It's got a very neutral head tube angle, and it pedals with efficiency and class.
Oh, tires folding over.
It handles the same low-angle, flatter trails really well. It pumps nice, it feels predictable, and it really impressed me.
Oh, this thing rides good. I'm happy with this bike. This thing is really cool. Sweet.
All sizes of the new Ripley ship as dual 29, though for the first time, the Ripley can now be converted to a bullet configuration with some simple adjusters. The rear travel grew slightly, up to 130 millimeters, and the bike is shipping with 140 millimeter forks. The bike has a down tube storage compartment where a rider can stash small items like car keys, multi-tools, or Legos.
Oh, I unclipped.
A few less obvious upgrades include bumping the shock size up to what was originally the Ripmo Link shock, a 210mm eye-to-eye. Though stroke is limited slightly to 52.5, so you'll need it to internally adjust your rear shock to use any old shocks you might have on hand. Perhaps my favorite update to the Ripley is the bottom bracket height, which raises slightly with each larger size. This keeps a consistent breakover angle and agility among all the bikes. With modern bikes being so long and slack, stability is aplenty, and affording a slight increase in clearance is a great upgrade, though my size medium still had a ton of pedal strikes. Perhaps that could come from the 170mm crank arms that Ibis specs, which I will quickly swap out for some 165s I have here.
So much for landing light and soft. So there's this thing over here where there's like a slight bump, and then it goes up, and then there's a jump. And I found on some bikes, if I feel comfortable on them, I can manual from the first thing up, 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 and then do a bit of a pull, and then fly away and try to find a landing. I did it in the HD6 video, and that thing worked pretty good. This bike, at first I was a little bit intimidated because you pull and it just, whew, it goes up really quick and easy. And on that thing there, it does it the best of any bike I've ridden so far in that section. You can just see manual, manual, manual. Pull. Yeah, it takes off really good. I like the way this bike's short and compact. It gets off the things and into the air really, really well. It rides way bigger than you think it would looking at the numbers.
Now the color is absolutely stunning. It's an electrified forest. It's really cool. Immediately, I noticed the new Ripley suspension was way more supportive than the prior versions. Combined with the short geometry, the bike is confident enough to be ridden aggressively, but still happy if you're not feeling max aggro. All in all, the bike felt absolutely amazing out of the box, to the point that I'm expecting to say it's best in class. But we haven't yet sent it, so let's get into it.
Ready when you are, Riley.
Now the old Ripley was pretty long in the tooth. Compared to the old Ripmo, it much more desperately needed a bit of an update. And wow, Ibis definitely delivered. The new Ripley shocked me at how good it is. I thought I prefer the Ripmo, like I usually do, and maybe I will long term, but initial impressions have me preferring the Ripley. Go figure, I didn't expect that at all. The bike climbs really well, even if you're tired and going slow. It's an absolute mountain goat on tight trails, comfortably climbing steep technical stuff. Sorry not sorry, the mountain goat buzzword is quite fitting.
There we go.
This comes from a good balance of geometry. The wheelbase is nicely short, so I can noodle through uphill switchbacks without many complaints.
That's so necessary.
The low bottom bracket is annoying, even in my size medium. I smashed even the clip-in pedals many times. My bike did come with 170mm cranks, and I will definitely go down to 165s. The new Ripley descended way better than I ever expected a bike in this category too. I love sending it with semi-reckless abandon into some pretty legit terrain. The geometry is happiest at single-track trail speeds and slower. Going really fast does get it a little overwhelmed, but it's such a solid, balanced platform. Getting overwhelmed? Yeah, it's a lot, but it's not as scary as I'm used to it being. Between the short reach and yummy rear suspension, the new Ripley loves to get airborne. I rode one of the steepest trails in town and was thinking I might just try an angle set. Then realized halfway down I certainly don't need an angle set. Stock, it felt great. If anything, 10mm more front travel will be sweet, but as it is, this thing handles really well. The biggest disappointment will be the 35mm wide rims. Cornering isn't amazing. The bike doesn't like to get as leaned over as I'd like. I'll try some narrower wheels to see if it can really fly.
Hardest corner in town. If you're enjoying the video, hit the subscribe button down below. It's the little red one.
Frame stiffness is good. It's softer than the outgoing Ripmo, but certainly not bad. Much better than the old Ripley V4. I did notice the lower length felt a small bit of side-to-side movement. I can't tell if it's just a normal shifting of the bushings or if it's a sign of an upcoming issue between a pivot shaft and the carbon. The Ripmo did have a much larger amount of side-to-side movement to the point that I contacted Ibis and they sent up a replacement swing arm. Ibis takes its customer service very seriously, and I am confident that Ibis will take care of any issues that arise for its customers. I am personally not a fan of down tube storage in general, as I have several bikes and always forget what I left in each down tube. If you're very patient and careful, you can fit an inner tube within the down tube, but it's going to be quite a hassle to get it out and finally dig out that multi-tool buried in the front. I think down tube storage is a bit gimmicky, but if you want to sell bikes, you need to play this game. Suspension. Wow, I didn't expect the Little Flow Evol to be so good. The tune feels very appropriate and the bike does a lot with a relatively small amount of travel. This is the best feeling suspension I've ever experienced from Ibis. Every once in a while, I get a test bike that exceeds expectations, and it's always fun when that happens, and it has absolutely happened with the new Ripley. If a 34.4 can work for you, then a Ripley V4 is hands down an amazing all-around one-bike quiver. Compared to the outgoing Ripley V4, well, there is no comparison. The new one is so much better. The real comparison is to the Ripley AF. The V4 is lighter, feels more stable and confident, and the extra suspension feels spot on. In my opinion, there's zero drawbacks. The Ripley is built to be a modern bike that can handle a lot. The Ripmo AF does feel overwhelmed when pushed really hard. Even on more chill trails, the new Ripley is still a lot of fun thanks to its fairly short nature. High tower. I should compare the Ripley to the Tallboy, but I've not ridden a Tallboy enough, so let's talk high tower instead. The Ripley feels more natural, even more balanced than the high tower. It feels plusher on small stuff and slightly more supportive on big, but both are very good here. Better than I ever expected. The high tower does have more pedal clearance and requires less overall thinking as you're riding it. The Ripley is much more responsive and will need more guidance, but will then return that with perhaps slightly more fun. High tower feels a touch bigger and can be ridden in several different riding styles. Ripley better rewards someone who is handling it with care, choosing careful lines, and not someone who sends it with reckless abandon.
Probably better without glasses.
Pivot Trail 429. The Trail 429 features much bigger all-around sizing. It does feel better than the Ripley at high speed. It feels more efficient with pedaling. It's got a little bit better pedal clearance, even though it does come with archaic 175mm crank arms. For me, it was harder to wheelie on the 429 with the super short back end. It was also harder to jump with the longer front end. It wasn't quite as lively of an all-around feel, which is probably better for super long distance folk. Now compared to the Ripmo. Earlier, I mentioned I may prefer the Ripley to the Ripmo. Using the same carbon bits, the Ripley is asking less of the frame, and it's applying less leverage to the pivot points. The Ripley frame stiffness felt better to me. The longer travel of the Ripmo is better for the rough, aggressive stuff, and for bigger jumps. Less travel is nice for an active riding style, and slightly less gnarly terrain. It's a tough call between the two configurations, and it's more of a difficult call now than it ever was in the past. As I'm writing this video, I'm expecting to be riding this new Ripley a ton and to be absolutely loving it, perhaps even more than the Ripmo. I'm going to keep working through the Ripmo because it's going to be interesting to see how it feels once it is dialed in. The Ripmo, having more travel, is going to take a bit more conscious effort to get dialed in compared to the shorter travel Ripley.
Thank you all so much for joining me for our little talk about the new Ripley. I've got the Ibis Ripley linked to over at Jensen USA. You can find that link in the description down below. And when you're over there, you can check out all the availability, pricing, geometry, specs, all that info. Anything you do purchase from that link at Jensen will help support my channel. It's a big part of how we make all this stuff happen. Big thanks to Jensen for sponsoring the video. Thanks to Ibis for loaning me this bike right here. Thanks to Rocco for cruising by. And thanks to Logan and Riley both for their help in filming and editing. All right, we'll see you guys down in the comments. Peace and wheelies.